Hey everyone, Kevin P. McAuliffe here, and I am back again with another Digital Juice tutorial, and this time we're going to take a look at getting started with animated shoulder sets for Adobe's After Effects. Now, as I started all my getting started with tutorials, I've got to remind you that if you haven't downloaded the most recent version of the Juicer, you need to head on over to the Juicer section of the Digital Juice website and download it. It's an absolutely free download for Windows and for Mac. And as of this recording, the most recent version of the Juicer is Juicer 3.89D build 270. Again, an absolutely free download for Windows and for all versions of Mac, including Mountain Lion. Now, before we get rolling with this getting started with tutorial, I do want to point out a couple things about animated shoulder sets. This collection is much like Simplexity, where it's first of all a digital download, meaning once you make your purchase, you can download the product right away and really get up and running with it immediately. The second thing that I want to point out is that you do have a couple options when making your purchase. You can decide to purchase the entire collection of shoulder sets, in any given volume, or you can get in and just purchase individual elements. This is another great enhancement with how Digital Juice is selling their products. If you don't have the budget for the entire product line, get in there and buy just the elements that you need right away. Okay, so what's going to happen is that once you make your purchase, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to log into your account on the Digital Juice website. I'm simply going to sign in. And what's going to happen once you sign in is you're going to navigate over to your account. You're going to come all the way over here to the left to the Digital Juice Downloads link. Once you click on the Digital Juice Download links, you're going to see inside of your download section, and you'll see right here, mine's a little bit different only because I'm actually doing this tutorial before this product even launches, so I don't actually have the icons here yet, but once you make your purchase, you'll see the icons here for animated shoulder sets. And all you really need to do is just to come into the Show Available Files for Download. I'm just going to click on that. And you'll see that what I have in here, first of all, is I actually have the 3 parts that make up the entire product line. They don't have it as one big, massive 6 gigabyte download. They've actually broken it up for you into smaller chunks, which I actually think is a good idea. The last thing you want is to be downloading a massive file, and it gets to 98% and then, crashes out on you. It's good to be able to get in and just download each part individually. So we have that option, obviously, for the full set. This is all of the animated shoulder sets. What we also have access to, though, is we have access to each one of the individual elements, which is also very handy to have. And you can see that they range in size, all the way from 203 megabytes all the way up to 1.36 gigabytes, obviously depending on how complex the element happens to be. Now, depending on which purchase you make, so for example, if you purchase the entire collection, you're only going to see these 3 items in the download section. If you purchase one of the items a la carte, you're just going to see just that element here inside of the animated shoulder sets collection when you click on the available files for download. Now, once you've downloaded your file and you're actually ready to get into the Juicer and install it, let's switch over and let's talk about how you're going to get in, install these products, and you're going to get them out of the Juicer to work with inside of Adobe's After Effects. Okay, let's Alt-Tab into the Juicer, obviously Command and Tab for all of my Mac friends out there. Now, first things first, we're obviously going to need to install animated shoulder sets. So what we're going to do is we're going to navigate right over here to the File drop-down. We're not going to come down to Install Products, but we're going to come down to Install Downloaded Content because we obviously downloaded this content from the Digital Juice website. What I'm going to do is I'm simply going to select that, and you'll see now that I'm actually directed to where my Downloads folder is. And you'll see right here I have all 3 parts of the main animated shoulder sets collection. Now, obviously, if you downloaded one of the a la carte elements, you're just going to want to import just that one element. But in this case, what we want to do is we want to start out by importing part 1. What I'm going to do is simply select it. I'm going to say Open. We're going to be brought to the license screen. I obviously encourage you to read the license agreement. And assuming that you do agree with it, simply say I agree. What we're going to do now is simply say Continue. What I would do in this case, just for me, because I don't like to install any of my Digital Juice elements onto my main hard drive because obviously, I'm using a solid state drive, hard drive space is at a minimum. I always like to install to an external hard drive, which has got a couple terabytes worth of storage space that I can put all of my favorite Digital Juice products on. So I encourage you, if you've got, a huge internal drive, no problem, go to it. If you don't, send those files to an external drive. So in this case, I already have the product installed, but if I didn't, I would simply say install and the product would be installed. Now remember, we're installing part 1. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to install part 1, part 2 and part 3 one right after the other, because you don't want to get in and start missing elements. Make sure you do it all in one sitting without quitting out of the juicer or anything like that. What I'm going to do is simply say cancel. And what most people do next is they come in and they start looking and trying to find animated shoulder sets. Well, what's important to keep in mind is that animated shoulder sets is a projects-based product from Digital Juice. So therefore, we're going to find it right here in projects and templates. What we're going to do, because we're talking about Adobe's After Effects, is we're going to come down to the After Effects projects section. And once I select it, you're going to see, you're going to think to yourself, wow, look at all these elements that I have, with animated shoulder sets. Well, hold on a second. That's not actually what we have here. What I'm actually looking at is all of the After Effects based products that I have installed in the juicer. And I got quite a few of them installed here. I've got some ready to go. I've got some toxic templates. I've got Simplexity. And of course I have animated shoulder sets. So how do I get in and whittle down to just what I want? Well, that's where filter mode comes into play. One of my favorite features inside the juicer. Now, most people think they're going to go to set or they're going to go to resolution, but that's not where we're going. We're going to go right to the product section. I'm just simply going to click on it and drop it down. I'm just going to expand our window out a little bit here. And you'll see that I've got, like I said, some ready to go elements. I've got Simplexity, some toxic templates, some toxic themes, but most importantly for us right now, I have the animated shoulder sets collection 1. As soon as I click on it, you'll see now that I'm now only shown the elements that are installed when we install animated shoulder sets. Now, of course, if I want to get in and preview any one of these elements at any time, all I have to do is simply select one of them, navigate up and hit play, and it gives me a preview of what this element is going to look like. Very nice. And obviously we can check any one of them out here. There we go. Very cool. We're going to talk about exporting these elements in just a second, because I want to point something else out before I move on, which is something I've pointed out in other getting started with tutorials, but I haven't talked about it recently, but it's something that's important that I do talk about. With animated shoulder sets, we're obviously getting After Effects projects that involve a bunch of different types of elements. And by making your purchase of these elements, you're actually getting access to all of the different parts that make them up, meaning that you can get in and export some of these elements from the juicer to use in other projects if you want to. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you'll see right now I'm on the Templates tab inside the juicer. Well, right beside that we have the Animated Elements tab. What I'm going to do is click on it and you'll see here are all the animated elements associated with these After Effects projects. See, we'll take a look at this lens flare here. I'll just simply click on it, hit play. Very, very cool. What's cool about this element is not only is it something that I can export from the juicer by simply adding it to the batch panel, but you'll see here it also can be exported with an alpha channel, meaning I can bring it into Premiere, Avid's Media Composer, even After Effects if I wanted to, and I can use this element as a transition in any project I happen to be working on. Now, obviously, exporting it is very easy. You can do it one of a couple ways. What you can do is simply take the element and drag it and drop it right over here into the batch panel, or what we can do is come down to our little film canister here. I'm going to click on it. We can simply say add to batch, which does the exact same thing. What I'm going to do is just click on that again. I can say, show me where this element is actually located. And you'll see, like I told you, I installed these elements to my Y drive. And you'll see it's in Y, Digital Juice, Animated Shoulder Sets, Passive Resistance, and it's in the Sources folder. And you can see we have all of our sources in here. Now, for me, I don't like normally working this way. What I'm going to do here is just close that window. What I normally like to do is just to export a completely separate element here. Let's just take this here. We'll just play that for a second here just to refresh our screen. And like I said, what I like to do is just take these elements and export them. But before I show you how we do that, what I'm going to do is just navigate back to this film can here for 1 second, because I do want to mention that we can get in and send these elements directly to Adobe's After Effects if we want to, or we could even get in and open them in an external editor if we wanted to. I don't have that set up, but to set it up, we could simply click on here, point it to whatever external editor we wanted it to open it with, and the juicer will obviously send that element to that application. But now to export this element here, if we wanted to use it, let's say in, Avid's Media Composer, all I have to do is simply navigate to Settings. Once the batch panel opens up here, what we're going to do here is we're going to navigate over here to the left. And you'll see we can get in, adjust the canvas size to be whatever we want. We can adjust the frame rate to be, let's just set it to be 23,976. What we can do is change the speed from very slow to normal to fast and very fast. We can get in and make some layer adjustments if we wanted to, adjusting scale, position, rotation. But what's most important here is the last section, the output section. You'll see we can get in and we can render the alpha separately if we wanted to check that. The field order, because we're working in 2398, will of course be progressive. This is a QuickTime movie. Right now the alpha channel is set to straight, but what I would want to do if hypothetically I was exporting this for Media Composer or even for animation, you'll see right now for animation I'm actually already set to export this with an alpha channel because it's set up for millions of colors plus. Now if we wanted to export for Media Composer, no problem. All I have to do is simply select the Avid DNX codec. Now because I'm working in 23976, what I'm going to do is just set this to be RGB. I'll set the alpha to be compressed, and I'm just going to want to make sure that I choose one of my 1080p 23976 codecs. In this case I would choose DNX 175. Simply say OK, and this element is ready to export and be brought into Media Composer or Symphony, or really any other application where the Avid codec is available to work with this fantastic element with an alpha channel. Just, this one little thing is just a huge bonus inside this collection. In most cases you don't have access to these elements in other products, but here inside of animated shoulder sets you have access to them. Very, very cool. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to cancel out of this for 1 second because there's a couple other things I want to show you inside of the juicer before we actually get to exporting. What I want to do is show you about customizing. I'm going to come over here to my Customize drop-down. I'm simply going to select Customize. You'll see we can get in and change the amount of thumbnails that we have across. Right now we've got 4. We could set that to be whatever we want. We could have 1 thumbnail. We could have 8 thumbnails across if we wanted to. But in most cases, 4 is a pretty good number. It keeps the thumbnails pretty big. And remember, we can always click on the elements and hit play to get a real-time preview of what they're going to look like inside of Adobe's After Effects. Now for me, the sort of the main things that you're going to want to worry about inside of the Customize drop down is you're going to want to make sure that display file name is turned on, because if it's not, you'll see the names of the actual elements disappear, and the only way to see them is to actually mouse over top of them, which can be a bit annoying, especially if you have a client sitting next to you in the edit suite. So I always like to leave that turned on. And for me, I also show icons only on mouse over. No. I like to have these icons shown all the time. I don't want to have them just when I bring the mouse over top of them. So what I'm going to do is simply say OK. I'm going to head back to Templates. Now let's talk about exporting these elements to use inside of Adobe's After Effects. Now there are a few ways that we can get these elements out of the juicer to work with them inside of Adobe's After Effects, but basically we start in the same place, which is with our After Effects icon. What I'm going to do is I'm simply going to click on the After Effects icon. You'll see the very first option I have is to simply collect the files. I'm now going to be brought to the Collect Files window, and basically all this is going to do is it's going to take the elements that were installed when we installed the product, and it's going to make a copy of each individual, whichever element I happen to select, and it's going to stick them in a folder wherever I decide to send it to. Now in this case it's going to the desktop, so I'm just going to send it to the desktop. I'll say Collect Now, and we'll just give the juicer a second here. You'll see it's moving all the QuickTime files. There we go. It's actually making a copy of them. It's not moving them. And what I'm going to do is just say, sure, show me the containing folder. And you'll see that what I have now on my desktop is a folder called Corner Office. And in there I have an alias to the After Effects project that's located inside of Full HD. There's the After Effects project right there. So basically, like I said, what's happened is that the juicer has made a copy of what was installed when we initially installed shoulder sets, and it's now placed it on the desktop with all of the elements that go along with it. Now this is a great way to work. I normally prefer working this way only because I have a copy of everything now. So if I get in, I decide I really want to archive this project, no problem. I've got a folder with everything contained in it ready to be archived right away. But of course there is another way that you can work as well. I'm just going to leave this on my desktop here, and I'm just going to close the window, and that is of course by just sending the project directly to After Effects itself. Now how we do that is very simple. The first thing you'll need to do is you'll need to set up your After Effects location. Now that's fairly straightforward. I've actually already done it. What I'll do is I'll just pick a different element here. Why don't we just pick surface hues? Why not? What I'll do is simply click on the After Effects icon, and you'll see that I can come down to Send Project to After Effects, and the first option I'll have here, if you don't have it set up, is you'll have Set Up After Effects Location. Fairly straightforward. You're just going to select it. The juicer will want to know where Adobe's After Effects is, and you'll see now that I have a couple options. I can import as a new project. Now what you'll do is you'll use this if you don't have After Effects open already, but if you do have After Effects open, you can also import this project into your current project. But like I said, since I don't have After Effects open right now, what I'm going to do is just simply say open as a new project. I'm going to be asked which element. Of course, there's only one. It's the full HD, and I'm going to say send to Adobe's After Effects. You'll see CS6 is going to open here, and we'll just give it a second to load all my plugins here, and there we go. There's the element ready to work with. And basically what this is referencing is it's referencing the elements that were installed in the juicer, but you'll see the most important thing is that when it opened, it called the project Untitled Project, and it wants to be saved. So now what I can do is I can get in and I can save this project as something new. Now let's say hypothetically I'd save this project out, but I didn't have any of the elements with it, and I wanted to get in and I wanted to archive the elements. Now how do I get all these elements onto the desktop? No problem. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, let's just save this project as, and we'll save it as a copy. I'll just stick it on the desktop here just for argument's sake. We'll just call it KPM. Why not? And what I'm going to do now is I'm simply going to say File, and I'm going to come down to Collect Files. It's going to ask me where do I want to collect these files to, and what we're going to do is I'll just make sure I am on the desktop here. There we go. And I'm just going to make a new folder to save this into. We'll just call it KPM's folder. Just like such. Call the project again, KPM for archive. Say save, and of course now I'm going to be asked what do I want to do. You'll see I have 9 files that make up 121 megabytes that are going to be collected. What I'm going to do is say just collect this into, of course, KPM's folder. I'll say go. You'll see there the elements being copied over. I'm just going to minimize After Effects here for a second. I'll minimize the juicer. And of course on the desktop now what I have is inside of here I have a folder called KPM for archive folder, which has a copy of the project that I saved and all the footage that goes along with it. Very cool. You'll see there they all are. So basically what I would do is just navigate right back here to the KPM for archive folder. Like I said, inside of here is of course the project and all the footage that goes with it. And I would simply take this, what I'll do is just stick it on the desktop here, and I'm just going to delete everything else. What we'll do is inside of After Effects here, we'll just close this, save file, close project. We're just going to get rid of all of this old stuff here. I'll just leave Corner Office because I saved that out as its own element. Basically what I have now is I have a folder where everything's been moved, and of course I have all the elements here ready to go. None of which of course are referencing the original clips inside of the juicer, and I can show you that by simply coming to the pre-renders folder. I can simply right click on this background and say reveal in Explorer, and you'll see that this file is located on the desktop inside that KPM for archive folder, inside of footage, inside of pre-renders. So you'll see a couple ways to do things. So if you decide you want to take the project, export it from the juicer, have it in one nice confined folder, and start working with that right away, you can do that. If you decide you want to just take the project and just send the project directly to After Effects, there is a way to get all of the elements copied over so that you can then archive them After Effects. It's just a matter of thinking through how you want to do things. Now really those are the two main ways that you're going to be sending files from After Effects. Now of course there is another way, which is if I come back into the juicer here, what you can also do if you come back to the After Effects icon is you can say show containing folder to show where this element was installed in the juicer, and you can work with those original files, but I always recommend against doing that. Why? That's when if you save over top of something, you're going to be doing a destructive process. Anytime the juicer is going to want to export an element to work with, if you've altered that project, that's what's going to be saved or copied out of the juicer to work with inside of your project, which is probably not what you want. Okay, so we've got an element here on the desktop here, and I believe it was Corner Office. What I'm going to do is just close this project here. There we go, and I'm just going to close all this up. I'm just going to delete this for now because I don't need it. I have Corner Office, and why don't we work with this element inside of Adobe's After Effects, and I'm going to show you how we're going to bring in a chroma key of our talent here, and it's also an interesting situation that you're going to want to think about when you're working, because the clip that I'm going to be bringing in is not 1920 by 1080. It's 1280 by 720, so we're going to want to take that into consideration when we're working. And what I'm also going to do is show you how you can take things and not only do a standard chroma key, but I'm going to show you how we can spice this chroma key up a little bit with some third-party plugins that you might have on your machine. Okay, so let's import some footage. What I'm going to do is right-click, say Import File. And I'm going to go to my recent places because I have a folder called, appropriately enough, Chroma Key Talent. And I'm going to bring in two different elements here. I'm going to bring in the Mary Jane element, and I'm going to bring in the VSM HD green screen video shoot. Now, I'm doing this for a specific reason because I talked about the fact that these elements here that we've rendered out of the juicer, that we've saved out of the juicer, are HD 1920 by 1080. Now the thing is that if you have a clip that's 1920 by 1080, which this Mary Jane clip happens to be, you're actually already set to go. All you need to do is take this element, drag and drop it into After Effects. Let's just put it on the topmost layer here, right above our anchor here. Let's try that again here. There we go. And then we can sort of position her. What I normally like to do just to get position is just adjust the transparency, and we'll sort of position her, you know, right about there. We're ready to get in and start chroma keying. Fairly straightforward, fairly easy. What happens in a situation where we have a shot like this that we need to use? I'm just going to zoom in on it here. The only problem is that if you take a look at this clip, it's actually 1280 by 720, so it's not as big as the other clip. Well, what most people would think that they would do, I'm just going to delete this Mary Jane clip here, is they would take this element, drag and drop it into the project like such. We'll just bring it right to the top. They say, okay, well, you know what? I'm just going to take this. I'm just going to scale it up. The only problem with doing that is that obviously by scaling up, we're going to lose quality. It's going to be, you know, not as crisp and clean as it would be at 720p, 1280 by 720. So in most cases, because the talent is really the most important thing, and chances are, if you shot this 720p, that's sort of the format you're going to be working with the entire way through the process. We want to keep things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to undo what I just did by dragging and dropping our talent into our composition. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our talent and drag and drop her into her own composition. As soon as I do that, what's going to happen is that a composition is going to be created that is the exact same parameters as the clip that was dropped in. Now, one thing I'm going to do here, and this is something I want to point out, and that is when the team at Digital Juice made this project, they set After Effects up in a certain way to show them the frames. You can see there's frames here, and you can see the frames zinging by as I drag through. But for me, I don't like working like that. I like working with timecode view. So to change this, all I have to do is navigate up to File. I'm going to come down to Project Settings, and I'm going to switch it back from frames to timecode, just like that. And there we go. There's my timecode back again. Very nice. And now that I've dragged our talent into her own composition, all I have to do now is simply take that corner office element and drag and drop it right in behind her. And guess what? She can now easily fit in this scene. Now you'll see that the frame size is a lot bigger than the 1280 by 720 frame size. What most people do in this case is they hit S on the keyboard on both Mac and Windows and adjust the scale. But for me, I don't do that. Why? Because what I like to do is I like to hit Control, Alt, and F, F as in Frank, Command, Option, and F on Mac. And what that's going to do is it's going to take our 1920 by 1080 image size and it's going to constrain it down to 1280 by 720. Basically, it's like snapping it down so that I know that this perfectly fits my frame. Now, of course, I don't need my talent here. So what I can do is simply turn my anchor off here inside of this pre-comp. And when I come back now, I can simply turn my talent on. I can position her wherever I need her to go. Let's just hit T for transparency here. There we go. We're going to put her over probably right about there. That's looking pretty darn good. So you'll see, obviously if you're working with clips 1920 by 1080, no problem. But you know what? If you got clips that are different sizes, even standard def, this is very easy to get in and very simple to adjust and get the background working exactly the same as your master clip. Okay, what I'm going to do now is let's talk a little bit about chroma keying, because that's obviously the most important next step here inside of After Effects. We're going to want to key our talent out to put her over top of our background. Now, how we're going to do that is actually very easy. What we're going to do is we're going to come over to the Effects and Presets tab inside of After Effects. I'm going to type in Key Light. There we go. Now, obviously, you might have other third-party keying applications that you prefer to work with. The reason I like to use Key Light is because it's included inside of After Effects. Why wouldn't I if it's there? What I'm going to do is take Key Light. I'm going to drag it right down here and drop it onto my clip. You're going to notice that nothing has happened. The reason that nothing has happened is because I haven't told Key Light what I want the screen color to be. Now, normally what I do first, before I even choose the screen color, is I say to myself, okay, well, you know what? There's a lot of extraneous information in here that I don't need. So what I want to do is I just want to see where she extends her hands out to, so I know where to do our mask. Let's just see. Does she extend her arms out very far? It looks like she pretty much keeps them sort of folded in front of her. I think we're going to be okay. So that's perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the pen tool and we're just going to mask around her here. We're essentially creating a garbage mat, just like such. The reason that I'm doing this is because I don't need to worry about keying all of this extra junk on either side of her. Really, the only thing that matters is the key that's right around her. If I wanted to get real specific, I could get right in here and just key right around her. So I'm only dealing with that little bit of green just between sort of her and the edge of the garbage mat. But I think this is okay. I just need to make sure that she doesn't stick her hands outside the frame here, which it doesn't look like she does. Very cool. Okay, so let's do the actual key now. So with key light obviously on our clip, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the eyedropper with the screen color and we're going to eyedrop right near her, as close to her as we can get. What I'm going to do here is just zoom in on her. Let's actually make sure here that I have my composition selected. So I'm just going to zoom right in. I'm going to sort of select right about in here. So I'm just going to come over here. I'm going to select it. Boom, there we go. Now most people think, oh, you know, fantastic, we're done. Awesome. You know, she looks great, don't need to do anything else. But that's not true. Because what we've done is we've gone in and we've selected that green color. The only problem is that there's bleed over that's going to happen onto her that you're not going to be able to see unless we actually get in and start dealing with the specific mat itself. And this is where understanding a little bit of key light is really going to go a long way. What we're going to do is we're going to switch from the final result, which is the actual chroma keyed element, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to take a look at the screen mat. What this is basically going to show me is what the mat looks like. And you'll see that we actually have some issues going on with the mat that is not what we want. This should be totally white and this should be totally black. And if you take a look, if I zoom in, they totally are not. So let's just deal with the black first here. What we're going to do is we're going to come over to screen mat and I'm going to twirl screen mat down. I'm just going to zoom back a little bit here just so I can see a little bit more of our talent. And I'm going to grab this clip black and I'm just going to start dragging it out. You'll see I don't really need to go very far until my blacks have been clipped to the point, just a little bit more I think, that they are perfectly black. Very cool. So of course if we were clipping the black to crush the blacks down to make them totally black, you'll think we can do the same thing with the whites, right? Well, you know what? You're totally right. Let's take clip white and let's just start dragging it back a little bit and you'll see that now we have a perfect key. Very cool. Now what I can do is I can simply come back, I can switch back to the final result and you'll see we now have a proper looking chroma key. Now we do got a little bit of some stuff going on in here that is not quite what we want. And how we get in and adjust that is actually very simple. What we're going to do is we're going to adjust the shrink grow of the screen. Now you'll see that what I can do is I can come in and if I grab this parameter and I stretch it out, it's actually adjusting it so there's more of a border around her. So all we're going to do is just take it back the other way a little bit here. Just like that. There we go. Very cool. So you can see this is what the original looked like. I'm just going to come back here. That's what the original looked like before we did the key. And that's what it's looking like now. You'll see a very nice, crisp, clean, matte key looking very cool. Okay. Now, most cases people would say, I'm done. Fantastic. Now, to be perfectly honest, if you didn't have any third-party plugins inside of Adobe's After Effects, you could be done and you'd be ready to take this and get in and add some elements into the drop zone. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But right now, what I want to do is just talk about how we can spice this up just a little bit more using a third-party plugin. Now, like I said, this is just kind of a bonus on top of what we already talked about if you happen to have an effect like this. And this is an effect you can find across many different packages. The one that I'm going to use is from Boris Continuum Complete. Now, the great thing is that, if you're interested in, maybe checking out Boris Continuum Complete after this tutorial is done, what I suggest you do is head on over to the Digital Juice store because you can actually find Boris Continuum Complete inside the Digital Juice store and you can find it at a bit of a discount if you're interested in picking it up. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to switch back here to the final result. And what would happen here is that if we actually had a screen with footage on it that was going in behind her with some flashy stuff, we'd actually see a bit of light shining out and wrapping around the edge of her. So what we're going to do is add a bit of a light wrap here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in, I'm going to type in light wrap. And there's BCC's light wrap. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take the light wrap, drag it right over here, drop it in underneath key light. Let's just come back up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, the first thing I want to do is the view is set to normal. What I'm going to do is say, just show me the wrap only. And you'll see the background right now is set to none. So right now the effect isn't looking at anything. But what I want to do is say, okay, use the corner office. Now if you take a look, you can see there's the light that's being wrapped around the edge of our talent. More so here where we have our screen and less so over here. But you'll see anywhere that there's bright images or bright parts of the image, we're going to get a bit of a better light wrap. Very cool. And what we can also do here is we can come in and adjust the lightness just to crank it up a little bit more, just like such. But where this really comes into play, and you'll see that the light wrap actually adjusts based on what's going on in the frame. So what's going to happen is right there is actually a perfect example. You'll see lots of light wrap in here now. So what's cool about this is that if I come back in and we come back to our view wrap only, I'm just going to switch back to normal. And there's the light wrap runner now. That's a little bit much. So what I probably would do is just back off on this a bit. Maybe I make it 0.4, just like that. But if I preview this here, it's going to preview pretty quick. You'll see that as this is flashing, the light's actually wrapping around her, more so over here than it is over here. And it just adds that extra little bit of realism. This is actually what would happen if we actually had a real screen behind her and the light was shining out and was sort of hitting the back of her jacket. We would see it right here. And check this out when I play it back. There we go. Take a look at that. That is some awesome looking realism. Now, like I said, this is just sort of an extra bonus that I wanted to throw in just to show you that you can take your keys and you can take them to the next level. But you know what? If you don't have that, no problem. We can simply stick with the fantastic key light effect that we've already added to have a really awesome chroma key. And take a look at that. She actually looks like she's standing inside of this almost virtual set. Okay, so of course one last thing that we do need to talk about is how do we get in and adjust these drop zones? Well, the first thing I'm going to need is some footage to work with. So we're just going to say that hypothetically she's going to be talking about, oh, I don't know here. Let's just come back to our Y drive here, and I'm going to come to my footage, and let's just say she's talking about why not? She's going to talk about some elephants. We'll just grab a couple elephant shots here. And she's also going to be talking about, I think we go to a couple shots in here. So why don't we have her talk about, oh, I don't know. Let's have her talk about some motocross biking. Why not? And I'm not sure if we go to a third one, but if we do, then I think I'm going to have her talk about dancing. Why not? We'll take this one dancing shot and we'll say open. There we go. So all we're going to do to get in and adjust this drop zone, very simple. I'm simply going to double click on corner office. We're going to come right over here. You'll see that I have my video zones right there at the bottom. You'll see we have our transitions. Very cool. But how we can actually get in and figure out what we need to adjust is very easy. You'll see that the team at Digital Juice has actually added little markers here to each one of the layers to tell you what you need to do. And you'll see right here we have open the comp to replace the video, which is exactly what we want to do. The team at Digital Juice couldn't have made it any easier for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate over here to Video Zone. I'm simply going to double click on it, and you'll see here are the 3 clips with the 2 transitions that we're going to want to get in and replace. Now obviously we're going to replace the drop zones, not the actual transitions themselves. So the first thing we need to do is just to pick a shot that we want to replace. Now I think I'm going to start with the elephant shot first. Why not? What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to pick one of these shots here at random, and I'll just double click here. Sure, why don't we just take this one here? What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the first drop zone. I'm going to hold Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac. Simply take that elephants 1, drag and drop it right down here, and there's the clip ready to go. Now what's important to keep in mind here is that you'll see that the clip extends way down past the end of the actual transition here. So if I wanted to get in and adjust this clip inside of the actual edit itself, all I have to do is simply grab it and drag it like this. You'll see not changing the actual duration of the clip, it's just changing what is actually going to be seen. So if I want to have this elephant, sort of turn and be seen in the shot, very cool, there we go. Then the transition will happen there. What we're going to do is take drop zone number 2, and I think I'll take, I don't know here, let's see, why don't we take some motocross footage here, or some BMXing footage. Again, Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac. We'll take this shot, drag and drop it right in here like such. Now obviously this shot's 720p, so I will need to scale this shot up a little bit. I'm not really too concerned with quality loss here because it's really only marginal depending on which codec you use. Now again, what we can do is simply take this, just drag it right to about there, so that way what's going to happen is we're going to go from our elephants to our guys almost taken off. Could be guys and girls, kind of hard to tell. And of course, last but certainly not least here, let's just turn our transition on here. There we go, transition, very cool. Transition, very cool. Last but certainly not least here, we're going to take our dancing shot, which I believe is the first one. There we go, very cool. Again, Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac, drag and drop. There we go. We'll scale this up a little bit. Very cool. And you'll see that what we can do here, of course, again, is to adjust this clip however we want. Very cool. Now, of course, when I come back to the main comp here, what we're going to have is we're going to have our elephants first. Transition in with the elephants. There we go. Then transition over to our BMXing guys here, or our motocross guys. Then, of course, transition to our dancer. Very cool. I'll give this a quick preview here. And you'll see, looking very cool. Now, of course, I'm looking at this at half res right now, but it's rendering pretty quick, or previewing pretty quick for half res. So you can see, again, what looks like an exceptionally complex animation and project is actually made very simple with Digital Juice's animated shoulder sets. So if you have any questions, you have any comments, or you have any tutorial requests, you can head on over and post them in the Digital Juice forums. This has been Kevin P. McAuliffe. Thanks a lot for watching.